A god's mistake caused the protagonist's death, leading to his reincarnation in a new world. As part of the process, he sacrifices all memories of his past life, beginning his new existence with a clean slate. Lightning strikes the forest, flashing brightly and making the birds fly away. Animals come out from the bushes to see what happened and find a man lying under a tree. Kelvin wakes up in a forest, confused. As he tries to make sense of his surroundings, a small screen appears before him with a start button. He clicks it. A female voice then greets him, welcoming him to a fantasy world full of clashing blades and soaring magic. Kelvin feels a pang of frustration as he realizes he has no memories of his past. He discovers his skills and finds out he's a summoner. The female speaking is Melfina, a goddess he made a pact with before his summoning. She suggests he visits a nearby town and join the guild to register as an adventurer. Excited by the prospect, Kelvin agrees. In the town, Melfina explains that the mistake that led to Kelvin's death was caused by another god. She was asked to intervene and correct the situation. Kelvin had fallen in love with her when he first saw her and begged her to accompany him to the new world. To honor his wish, she left her duties behind and joined him. As for his memories, he chose to erase them in exchange for gaining more skills, a decision that now angers him. He runs away, then stops to catch his breath and considers summoning Melfina. Melfina informs him that he doesn't have enough MP to summon her just yet. Kelvin heads to the Adventurers Guild. There, the receptionist asks if he plans to list his class as summoner. When Kelvin asks if that's a problem, she explains that summoner is an ultra-rare job, limited to one per nation. Such a classification would attract the attention of rulers. Wanting to avoid unwanted attention, Kelvin decides to list his class as Green Mage instead. He completes his registration and starts with an F-rank membership. The receptionist explains how the guild's ranking system works. As an F rank, Kelvin can accept jobs up to one rank higher than his current level. However, if he fails a job, he will incur a contract penalty, so he needs to be cautious. She then presents him with a list of available quests. Kelvin chooses the quest to deal with blue slimes. He purchases a wooden rod, and Melfina informs him that while it lacks physical attack power, it does have a small amount of magic. He heads into the forest and soon spots the blue slimes. Hiding behind some bushes, Kelvin decides to use his wooden rod to fight them, but he quickly discovers that the slimes are tougher than he anticipated. The slime continues to attack him relentlessly. After a struggle, Kelvin manages to use a clever trick to defeat it. Kelvin decides to recruit the defeated slime through a contract. He names it Clotho. Summoning Clotho, Kelvin tells the slime that if it doesn't want to continue, it can opt out, but Clotho is eager to join him. Together, Kelvin and Clotho tackle more slimes. Kelvin is slimed to find that Clotho's strength has increased after the contract. Later, Kelvin receives payment for his quest, enough to afford a meal and rent a room for the night. As he walks through town, he notices a slave merchant's stall and sees an elf who catches his eye. However, his remaining funds aren't enough to consider purchasing her. He heads to the Spirit Song Inn and rents a room. There he is greeted by Claire, who helps him settle in and prepares a meal for him. The receptionist, Ange, at the guild congratulates Kelvin on his recent success and informs him that he's been promoted to an E-rank adventurer. Kelvin shyly thanks her. Ange expresses her concern about Kelvin taking on higher-ranked jobs without forming a party. Kelvin, however, thinks to himself that if he forms a party, his role as a summoner might be exposed, so he decides that he and Clotho are enough for now. People whisper about Kelvin's rapid promotion from Solar Adventurer to E-rank, making him feel uneasy. As he prepares to aim for D-rank next, Ange advises him to upgrade his equipment before tackling more challenging quests. Kelvin agrees and asks to take on a D-rank quest. An adventurer named Cashel suggests the Black Ghost Knight quest. Cashel introduces himself as a D-rank adventurer. Conversations among other guild members reveal that Cashel is rumored to have strength of a B-rank adventurer and is known as a rookie crusher. Cashel offers to let Kelvin join his party, but Ange warns him that the Black Ghost Knight is reportedly more formidable than other quests. Kelvin uses his appraisal eye to assess Cashel's stats. The protagonist proposes a competition. Whoever defeats the Black Ghost Knight first wins. Outside the guild, Cashel meets with his two allies, Gimel and Raj. Gimel updates Cashel on Kelvin's stats, while Raj is given the task of being the gentle muscle against Kelvin. Raj, however, refuses to play nice and declares he'll handle Kelvin the same way he deals with everyone else. Inside the castle, Cashel's group navigates through the hallways, approaching the throne room. They find the floor littered with skeletons. Kelvin emerges from his hiding place, his verdant staff in hand. Cashel's group quickly realizes he's a wind mage, noting how they'll need to approach him. Kelvin, spotting them, taunts the group. Raj steps forward to attack Kelvin, but falls into a trap of muddy vines, which ensnares him. Cashel figures out that Kelvin used his concealment skill to cast the spell. Panicking, Gimel flees only to encounter Clotho, who has recently evolved from a blue slime to a slime Gluttonia after Kelvin's prior battles. Clotho easily defeats Gimel, and Raj, having escaped the muddy trap, is quickly overpowered and constricted by Clotho. With Raj and Gimel subdued, Cashel is left to face Kelvin. Kelvin, piecing together Cashel's motives, learns that Cashel and his party target adventurers for their own gain. After the battle, Kelvin secures the defeated foes, preparing to uncover more about their dirty plans. Wasting no time, Kelvin enters the room where the Black Ghost Knight stands. He uses his appraisal eye to assess the knight. Learning that his name is Gerard and discovering his stats and skills, Kelvin is intrigued by the possibility of recruiting Gerard and decides to engage him in a conversation. Gerard reveals his tragic past. He was once a loyal knight of the fallen kingdom of Alcarl. An elven emissary from the western continent, Gildor, had offered him a chance to join the Lysia Empire and destroy the empire of Deramus. When Alcarl's king refused, Gildor warned of dire consequences. The kingdom was soon reduced to ruins, and Gerard's wife Betty and daughter Connie perished. Bound by his vow to avenge Alcarl, Gerard remains in the realm of the living, driven by his duty. Kelvin, keen on making a contract with Gerard, challenges him to a duel. With Melfina's guidance and Clotho's assistant, Kelvin manages to defeat Gerard. The next day, Kelvin returns to the guild to report the completion of the Black Ghost Knight quest. He learns that Cashel's group has been imprisoned and is likely facing execution for their crimes. Celebrating his successful quest, Kelvin is informed by Ange that he is set to be promoted further by the guildmaster. As he heads up the stairway to meet the guildmaster, he encounters a finely dressed older man who is waiting for him at the top. Kelvin meets the guildmaster Leo. Leo asks Kelvin if he comes from another world. As Leo uses his appraising eye on Kelvin to discern his true identity, Kelvin fears that Leo might uncover his real background and the truth about his origins. They sit down to discuss Kelvin's recent achievements. Leo's curiosity leads him to ask if Kelvin is a summoner. After some consideration and guidance from his tamed monsters, Kelvin admits to being a summoner. He then questions why Leo did not take action against Cashel, despite knowing about his dubious activities. Leo explains that he was unable to act against Cashel because the latter is a noble from the militant nation of Tricen. Leo needed solid proof to make a move. Leo expresses a genuine interest in becoming friends with Kelvin, mentioning that he has met other worlders before, specifically the heroes of the Holy Empire, Deramus. Melfina chimes in, noting that she was the one who reincarnated the heroes and offers to provide more information about them if Kelvin is interested. Leo continues, revealing that the priestess of Deramus had foretold about the revival of the Demon Lord. He implies that he wants Kelvin to protect the town in place of the absent heroes. Kelvin agrees to take on the responsibility. Later, Claire congratulates Kelvin on his promotion to B rank in the guild and prepares a special side dish to celebrate his achievement. As he enjoys his lunch in his room, Kelvin asks Melfina for more details about the heroes of Deramus. Her explanation reveals that they were chosen for their good looks and knowledge rather than specific qualities. Kelvin retrieves his reward money from Clotho and heads to the alleyway where slaves are sold. He plans to enhance his party's strength by acquiring a rear guard who hasn't been bought by anyone else. This is crucial because a slave's master has full control over the allocation of their skill points. Kelvin spots the elf he noticed before. The slave trader informs him that no one wants to purchase her due to a curse that burns anyone who touches her. Melfina provides further insight, revealing that the curse is from the Fire Dragon King and can only be broken with an A-rank white magic spell called Sacred Bless. Kelvin returns to the trader and purchases the elf, named Ethel. She expresses her gratitude for being bought, and they talk. Kelvin places his hand on Ethel's head and casts a spell to lift the curse. As the magic takes effect, he gently caresses her hair and reassures her that she will no longer suffer. Moved by his kindness, Ethel collapses to her knees, tears streaming down her face. At the inn, Claire dresses Ethel in a maid's outfit. When Kelvin sees her in the new attire, he blushes and tells her she looks beautiful. Ethel's face turns red and she shyly covers it with her hands. They both share a dinner together. Later, back in Kelvin's room, he reveals all his secrets to Ethel. He allows her to allocate her skill points according to her preferences. At night, they have to share a bed. Kelvin is unable to sleep as he adjusts to the new arrangement. A month later, in the dark purple forest, Kelvin and his group spend their time leveling up and completing various jobs. Ethel has invested all her skill points into archery and far-seeing and has also learned sewing as she leveled up. When they visit the guild, Ange praises Kelvin's progress and informs him that after completing one more job, he'll be eligible for a rank-up exam. Ethel encourages Kelvin, excited for him to reach A rank soon, and he praises her skills in return. Ange invites Ethel to check out a new sweet store she discovered and suggests that Kelvin join them. Ethel eagerly asks that Kelvin accompany them, and Ange convinces him to agree. Kelvin meets Ange by a fountain, and they're soon joined by Ethel, who is wearing a beautiful dress. Kelvin compliments her on the outfit thanks to Ange's nudging. After purchasing some sweets, they sit at a table where Ethel tries to feed Kelvin a piece of cake. The act attracts the attention of a small crowd of men. Trying to avoid the unwanted attention, Kelvin explains the situation, but Ange, not wanting to be left out, offers Kelvin a sweet roll as well. They're interrupted by Tabra, the third prince of Trycen, accompanied by 2 guards. Tabra scolds them, saying commoners should not engage in public displays of romance. Tabra also expresses an interest in Ethel and offers to let them go if Kelvin hands over one of his women to him. Kelvin deals with the 2 guards and uses a gravity spell on Tabra, demanding to know why he's in the town of Parth. Overwhelmed, Tabra reveals he's there to meet with Leo about a strong adventurer he wanted to recruit. Kelvin reveals that he is the adventurer in question and refuses to serve under Tabra. The confrontation is now settled. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Daramus, at the Great Cathedral, a woman named Colette kneels in prayer before the statue of goddess Melfina. As she prays, a brilliant light emanates from the statue. Melfina responds to Colette's prayer, and Colette provides an update on the heroes of Daramus. Pleased with the information, Melfina delivers an oracle to Colette that the heroes are needed to exterminate a dark force in the western continent and should avoid the town of Parth. Following the oracle's guidance, the heroes arrive at their destination. Colette gathers the group and shares the oracle's message, outlining their mission to confront the evil in the west and to steer clear of Parth for the time being. That night at the inn, Ethel thanks Kelvin for his help earlier. Feeling a bit awkward about sharing a bed, Kelvin apologizes. Ethel is worried she's not good enough for him. Kelvin reassures her, saying she's perfect just the way she is. She jumps onto him and buries her head in his chest. The next morning, Kelvin, Ethel, Gerard, and Clotho review the stats of the heroes of Daramus. They're surprised to find the heroes' levels are much lower than expected. Kelvin is pleased, and he successfully crafted a staff from the monster materials after many failed attempts. Gerard notes that Kelvin also made him a dreadnought shield and a crimson cape. Ethel created a sage's black robe for Kelvin using her sewing skills. Claire then arrives to inform Kelvin that the guild needs to see him. In the guildmaster's office, Leo tells Kelvin about a rank D dungeon called the Hermit's Cave. There's a secret room inside with a powerful demon. Leo also mentions an issue involving the third prince of Trycen from earlier that day. When Leo asks if Kelvin will take the quest, he agrees. Later, Kelvin, Ethel, and Gerard head to the Hermit's Cave dungeon. They meet Erd, who explains the situation. In the secret room, they find a demon woman chained up. Another demon, Archdemon Victor, sits on a pile of bones and introduces himself. Victor says the chained woman is the daughter of the current demon lord, Gustav. Melfina tells Kelvin that there were 3 demon lords before, and this woman must be Gustav's daughter. Kelvin is surprised as he thought Gustav had no children. Victor confirms that while Gustav didn't officially have children, this woman is indeed his daughter. Victor then reveals his plan to trap them, absorb their power, and become the next demon lord. As Victor attacks, Gerard blocks the blow with his shield. Victor's plan is exposed. Victor, amused by Kelvin's enthusiasm, casts the black magic spell, Hades' Army. Skeletons from nearby piles are resurrected as demons, and Victor commands them to attack with a snap of his fingers. Kelvin notices that these demons are B-ranked and uses his wand to cast Wind Shot, destroying a small group of them. Gerard helps take down the rest. Victor praises their skills, but then uses a smoke bomb to conceal himself and prepare for a sneak attack. Kelvin senses Victor's presence and warns Gerard, who immediately counters. Despite their efforts, Victor overpowers Gerard and turns his focus to Kelvin. Kelvin has Clotho use magic absorption on Victor and casts Glorious Sanction, which binds Victor's left arm. However, it isn't enough to restrain him completely. Kelvin enchants Gerard's sword with Vortex Edge, and Gerard attacks Victor. Meanwhile, Ethel reveals herself and shoots a blaze arrow, scorching Victor's right arm and making it unusable. Gerard then slices off Victor's left arm. Although pleased with this progress, Kelvin calls for a temporary retreat as Glory's sanction expires. Victor acknowledges that they've dealt him significant damage, attributing his loss of edge to the peace of the current era. He casts Jinn Scrimmage, enveloping himself in dark, ominous energy. To stop him from completing the spell, Kelvin, Ethel, and Gerard each launch attacks, but they're too late. Kelvin orders Gerard to use his loyalty skill at full power. As Victor lunges at them, Kelvin casts Earthen Rampart to block the attack, but Victor breaks through. Gerard uses his shield as a last defense, but Victor gets the upper hand. Before Victor can deal a fatal blow to Gerard, Ethel distracts him with arrows. Gerard then counters and Clotho attacks Victor by spitting out all the failed weapons Kelvin had crafted. The combined assault from Kelvin, Ethel, and Clotho forces Victor against a wall. A pillar collapses, nearly crushing Sarah Ball. Victor, in a final act of protection, moves the rubble away from Sarah and collapses, conceding defeat. Kelvin exposes Victor's lie about eating Sarah, to which Victor admits he lied to make Kelvin's party fight harder. He reveals that Gustave entrusted him with protecting Sarah as her caretaker. Victor recalls his past as Sarah's caretaker. He trained her in magical combat, and when the hero's party attacked the Demon King's castle, Gustave sealed Sarah with a spell only a human could break and sent her to safety. Victor was tasked with finding and protecting her until a peaceful era could revive her as the next Demon King. Before he dies, Victor asks Sarah to join Kelvin's party, but she refuses, saying her loyalty is not only to Gustave. Kelvin breaks the seal on Sarah, who awakens and tearfully curses Victor and her father for their selfishness. Outside the dungeon, Erd accepts the proof of the demon's subjugation but asks about the woman Kelvin was carrying. Kelvin explains she was possessed by the demon and hides her identity with a camouflage hairpin to conceal her wings and horns. Later, Kelvin evolves Gerard into an abyssal knight commander. He and his party take Sarah to Parth and show her around. When Kelvin reports to the Adventurers Guild about successfully subjugating the demon, he's promoted to rank A. They celebrate his achievement at the inn. After the party, Sarah reflects on the excitement of the outside world and remembers her past with Victor. Kelvin officially tames Sarah as one of his monsters and later shows off the results of his S-rank blacksmithing and Ethel's S-ranked sewing skills. Sarah presents Arendite, a weapon crafted from Victor's armor and Queen's Terror. Gerard receives a new magical sword called Dainsleif. Kelvin and Sarah's new weapons will be revealed in battle. Tired and hungry, Ethel asks Kelvin what he wants to eat. When he mentions rice, the group is confused, leading to an explanation of what rice is. The group travels to Tourage by wagon. Sarah spots a river, and Kelvin suggests fishing, though she doesn't know what that is. He promises to show her once they arrive at Tourage, where rice is grown. Gerard reports that Malphina is missing, but she offers to send an avatar while she takes a vacation. During their journey, Sarah notices hidden people watching them. They turn out to be the Black Wind Gang, led by a woman named Prisra. The wagon driver recognizes them as a notorious gang previously defeated by an A-rank adventurer from Trycen. Kelvin decides to let Sarah handle the bandits on her own, but forbids her from using Arendite. Sarah easily defeats the bandit Ansu, who tries to capture her. The bandit leader sends more members to confront her, but they are quickly overpowered. Even Gilda, a large bandit with high strength, is defeated by Sarah. Upon reaching Tourage, Kelvin observes that it resembles old Japan. Sarah, seeing the sea for the first time, gets excited. She asks Kelvin to teach her how to swim, and he blushes. At Tourage's Adventurers Guild, the group turns in the captured bandits. Guildmaster Mist thanks them and reveals that she and Leo were once adventuring partners. Mist explains that Christoph, a renowned adventurer from Trycen, was believed to have defeated the Black Wind Gang. However, the gang is back and involved in slave trading. Due to political issues, direct action against them is complicated. Kelvin asks Sarah to locate one of the bandits, and she finds a level 50 person at the town entrance. This excites Kelvin because the heroes of Deramus are arriving in town. The heroes of Deramus, led by Toya and Setsuna, learn about the bandits. Toya wants to get involved, but Setsuna insists they should follow Malphina's guidance and head west. The discussion reveals that Kelvin had a plan suited to their needs. In the bandits' hideout, a bandit named Hope tries to attack a slave girl named Ruka, but is quickly defeated by Gerard. Christoph, the bandit leader, discusses their plans with Prisra. Hope, defeated and collapsed at Christoph's door, prompts Kelvin, Sarah, and Gerard to confront the bandits. Kelvin goes after Christoph, Sarah pursues Prisra, and Gerard faces another bandit named Otto. Christoph reveals they're preparing for something larger than just a fight. The heroes of Deramus arrive at the hideout and encounter Clotho while rescuing the captives. Luca, protecting Clotho, introduces himself as the hero of Deramus. Nana, another hero, learns from Clotho that it is there to protect the slaves. Luca's mother asks the heroes to rescue rank A heroes in trouble. The heroes find Christoph and his gang knocked out and face off against Kelvin's group, who are awaiting them. The heroes of Deramus confront Kelvin's group, accusing them of being the Black Wind. Kelvin plays along, boasting about Gilda's group's vulnerability. The heroes, unsettled, introduce themselves, and Toya declares that justice will be served. Kelvin mocks their weakness and proposes a game. He'll fight them all and the winner will have their wish fulfilled. Despite Toya's desire to fight alone, Setsuna insists that Kelvin is hiding something. With his team's backing, Toya agrees to the challenge. They move to an open area where Eiffel reveals that Kelvin's plan, if he wins, involves having the heroes testify against Kristoff and his gang. Sarah wants to fight, but Kelvin dismisses this and has Eiffel serve sandwiches for everyone while they watch. Eiffel is concerned about Kelvin risking a fight against the heroes alone, but he insists it's an opportunity to address his weakness in the group combat and test his new trinket, the Skill Eater. Toya accuses Kelvin of being the Black Wind Bandit group. Kelvin uses the Skill Eater on Miyabi. The heroes summon their fairies' blessings and Toya attacks. Kelvin praises Toya's close-range strategy and casts Radiant Lances, forcing Toya and Setsuna to block. Nana's monster uses Fire Breath, but Kelvin dodges. He then uses Skill Eater on Miyabi, prompting Toya to attack while Setsuna and Nana help Miyabi. After the battle, Toya learns the truth about Kelvin and apologizes. Kelvin agrees not to hold anything against him as long as Toya upholds his end of the bargain. Kelvin's team is then asked to strip, much to their dismay. The fight resumes, and Kelvin, using his new spell Radiant Crossfire, defeats the hero party despite their efforts to restrain him. Kelvin, Mist, and a guild receptionist watch as Luca, her mother, and other freed slaves are driven away on a wagon. Once that's settled, Mist asks Kelvin where he's heading next. Kelvin replies that he's off to execute a fun punishment game. Later, the heroes of Doramus are shown struggling against a giant octopus in a cave, with Kelvin observing from a distance. Sarah fishes nearby while Eiffel and Clotho prepare a picnic. Despite Kelvin's advice, the heroes continue to struggle. Once they finally defeat the octopus, Kelvin allows the picnic to begin. They discuss Doramus priestess Colette. Toya recounts how Colette summoned them and mentions their encounter with Melfina before they arrived in the alternate world. When asked how they would handle an S-class dungeon with their current strength, Toya admits they'd have to retreat. Sarah catches a sinister dragon, the cave's boss monster. As Sarah battles the dragon, Kelvin remarks that Toya's group's failure would harm the people they protect. Toya responds that his group would train to gain the strength needed to fight such monsters. Impressed by his determination, Kelvin helps Sarah with the battle. Afterward, Kelvin and his group bid farewell to Toya's group as they set off by boat. Kelvin gifts each of them a pendant as a parting gift. Gerard approaches Kelvin and asks about his thoughts. Kelvin inquires if Rizea, the country that destroyed his homeland Alcal, is across the sea, to which Gerard confirms. Kelvin then asks if they could defeat Rizea if they fought them, and Gerard believes they could, but Kelvin wants to first tackle the S-class monsters on their current continent. He also reveals that the pendants have minor stat boosts and a secret function he hopes will never need to be used. Sarah informs them that Mist has sent a message that an important person wants to meet with them. They soon meet Queen Tsubaki Fujiwara of Tourage, who thanks them for dealing with the Black Wind Bandits and the S-ranked dragon. Although she can't hold a feast due to the conflict in Trisen, she offers to reward them. Kelvin requests the right to purchase rice from Tourage, which amuses Tsubaki. She agrees and offers them as much rice as they want. She then hosts a small banquet and they all enjoy themselves. Several days later, Eiffel serves Kelvin a traditional Japanese meal and he praises her cooking. Tsubaki joins them, expressing her love for Eiffel's food and attempting to entice Kelvin to stay in Tourage, but he rejects her, wishing to return to Parth. Tsubaki provides them with access to Tourage's teleportation gate to assist their journey. News of Kelvin meeting the Tourage Queen spreads thanks to Ange, though Kelvin downplays it, stating he has no plans to settle in Tourage. Kelvin and his companions purchase a house and Luca and her mother arrive as hired servants. That night, Melfina returns to Kelvin in the avatar body she mentioned before. Melfina enjoys the meal prepared by Eiffel and then complains about the difficulty of finding Kelvin. Gerard, curious, asks who Mel is, prompting her to formally introduce herself. Later in the living room, Melfina requests to be called Mel to avoid any potential conflict with Doramus. She then bestows Kelvin a blessing with two effects. It prevents him from receiving a fatal wound once a month and grants him the ability to summon heroes. Sarah and Mel spar outside while Luca and Gerard watch. Kelvin, outside the mansion, contemplates whether the heroes of Doramus have reached the western continent and ponders his new hero summoning ability. After the spar, Sarah and Mel retire to the bath area, where Eiffel offers her services. They discuss Kelvin's aloof behavior, suspecting it's related to the hero summoning ability. Later, Mel meets Kelvin in the backyard and he asks her about the importance of heroes. Mel first explains the Demon King's unique skill, Papia, which multiplies the evil within its user and nullifies all damage. Heroes, by contrast, have fundamentally different natures. Mel notes Kelvin's anxiety about the hero summoning process and suggests he try a reincarnation summon, explaining the two different summoning techniques. That night, Kelvin decides to perform a reincarnation summoning. He recalls all his tamed creatures and drinks a recovery potion provided by Ethel. Guided by Mel, Kelvin begins the reincarnation summoning process. The summoning individual who picks their skills, abilities, age, and appearance appears in the summoning circle as Rio. She tearfully thanks Kelvin before collapsing from exhaustion. Kelvin, too, collapses from depleting his magic. When Rio wakes up in her room, she ventures outside and meets Kelvin. He shares his experience in the world, and Rio tells her story as a sickly individual who found solace in books and is now grateful for her new life. She asks to join Kelvin's adventurer party, and he agrees, asking her to consider him a step-sibling from another land. Rio happily accepts, calling him Brother Kel, while Kelvin refers to her as Rion. During the night, Kelvin wakes up to find Sarah, Mel, and Rion soundly sleeping beside him. Though surprised, he feels content that they are all resting peacefully. Later, Kelvin lets Rion explore the dark purple forest with a Clotho clone on her shoulder. He then informs Luca and Ellie, who also have Clotho clones, about his plans to use his experience share technique to level them up. They will stand outside a nearby dungeon while Kelvin fights inside to accumulate experience points. As Sarah, Clotho, and Gerard clear the surrounding monsters, Rion, Luca, and Ellie gain levels. Ethel reports the approach of a shadow wolf, which Kelvin decides to handle himself. He tames the shadow wolf and names it Alex. Luca and Rion eagerly hug the newly tamed wolf. Urd's party arrives, planning to hunt monsters for a B-rank promotion. Kelvin introduces Luca and Ellie as his mansion maids, and Mel and Rion also introduce themselves. Urd's party members, envious of the beautiful girls, quickly leave. When Sarah's group returns, they reveal they've cleared out all the monsters in the forest. Kelvin later apologizes to Urd, who suggests reporting to Leo for the S-rank promotion exam. Kelvin and Rion bathe Alex in the mansion courtyard. Rion names the shadow wolf Alex and becomes its partner. Alex mentions being hungry, and Rion shares her ability to understand animals with Kelvin and Ethel. Gerard then summons Rion for sword practice. She spends the rest of the day with Kelvin's friends. That night, Sarah informs Kelvin that 14 assassins have surrounded the mansion. Despite Sarah's warning, the assassins remain undetected. Kelvin prepares for a fight using Ethel's Farsight skill to locate the leader of the intruders. He decides to test Rion and equips her with a mini Clotho and the resonating mithril sword. The intruders are linked to Kristoff and Trysen. Rion and Alex handle them while Kelvin and Sarah watch from safety. After the fight, Clotho cleans up the area and Kelvin addresses any remaining stragglers. At Trysen Castle, Emperor Zell Trysen meets with his generals and children to discuss the fallout from their alliance with Kristoff. Daramus, Taraj, and Gon are considering an alliance against Trysen. Zell is concerned that their denial of Kristoff's involvement may not be enough. Tristan suggests war, believing Trysen's forces are superior, and it's a good time to unify the continent. Shutora opposes the idea, while her brother Asgard and General Dan support it. The decision is left to General Clive, who must break the tie. General Dan's son, Jin, delivers a message to Clive as he finishes his personal activities. Riding through Crest Forest, Kelvin's group heads towards an elven village. Ethel feels a sense of familiarity, which Kelvin attributes to her elven heritage. Sarah finds it unusual that elves are on the eastern continent, but Mel explains that elves migrated from the western continent over a decade ago, now under Gon's protection. A conversation occurs with Guildmaster Leo, who mentions ongoing skirmishes between Trysen and Gon. Trysen's reluctance to provoke Parth or Taraj hints at potential future conflict, possibly causing invasion and war. Leo assigns Kelvin a quest from Leonhard Gon, the Beast King, who wishes to meet him personally. In the present, Gerard notes Kelvin's luck with King Leonhard's S-rank promotion. Kelvin also needed Queen Tsubaki's approval for the exam. They discuss their current task, which is defending an elven village from an S-ranked monster, which Kelvin suspects is linked to Trysen. Elven archers stop them, but Kelvin clarifies the situation. Village elder Nell Ross greets them and recognizes Ethel as Rumil. Expressing shock at her survival, Nell Ross later apologizes for his earlier behavior and recounts the village's past. A fire dragon threatened to destroy the village unless an elf who had humiliated it stepped forward. Lumil, who offered herself to calm the dragon, was found dead a decade later, leading the elves to flee to the eastern continent. It's speculated that Lumil was Ethel's mother. Nell Ross explains that monsters have been penetrating the village's barrier and kidnapping elves. Kelvin and his party agree to help and seek permission to make some protective renovations to the village. That night, Trisend soldiers, led by a commander under General Tristan's orders, approach the village. Ethel, equipped with a new shadow bow from Kelvin, snipes the soldiers with support from Kelvin. The village has been fortified with mist, a black magic moat, and a blocked-off entryway. A messenger reports to the vice commander that Unit 4 was wiped out and its commander was taken hostage, with B-ranked monsters defeated by an adventurous party. As Unit 5 prepares to engage, a Gigant Lord, the secret weapon, appears. Mel and Leon handle the situation, with Leon proving herself by defeating the Gigant Lord, which transforms into a Furnace Lord. Leon finishes it off with her Generate Edge attack. Meanwhile, General Clive and his 5 soldiers attack Kelvin and Ethel at the village. Hovering near Kelvin and Ethel with 4 soldiers, General Clive expresses his admiration for Ethel and demands she become his slave, attempting to charm her. Kelvin, outraged, attacks Clive, declaring that he won't allow harm to come to Ethel. He then praises Clive, discovering he is also a reincarnated individual, just like himself. Upset by this revelation, Clive realizes Kelvin must be a reincarnated individual as well. As Ethel retreats, Kelvin transforms the mountain into 4 obsidian javelins and throws them at Clive. Clive's helix barrier protects him and his charmed soldiers begin to attack Kelvin. Clive believes his charm ability works not only due to its power but also because of his own attractiveness. Ethel breaks Clive's helix barrier with an arrow, and Kelvin is joined by 4 golems he created. Clive, impressed by the golems, has his soldiers engage them while he confronts Kelvin directly. During their fight, Kelvin notices Clive's attacks are also hitting his soldiers, a situation Clive is indifferent to, as he can easily replace them. Clive boasts about his cheat ability, allowing him to live freely without restrictions. Disgusted by Clive's arrogance and treatment of others, Kelvin breaks Clive's helix barrier and scars his face. In response, Clive breaks Kelvin's staff, which Kelvin has Clotho devour. Enraged, Clive casts a rank S spell, Tempest Barrier, creating a powerful windstorm. Kelvin counters with his Black Staff Disaster, an S-rank weapon which he uses to break Clive's Tempest Barrier, slicing a mountain's top and Clive's legs. Before Kelvin can finish Clive, General Phase arrives on a golem and teleports Clive away. Phase, the mastermind behind the attack on the Elven village, rejects Kelvin's demand to hand over Clive and claims victory for the day. Kelvin considers it a tie and returns to the village to recover. At Trisend Castle, Clive is chained and tortured by his soldiers under Phase's orders as part of an experiment with cursed weapons. Meanwhile, back at the Elven village, Kelvin's party celebrates with a banquet. Kelvin, watching from a hill, is joined by Ethel, who shows him a medallion that once belonged to her mother. Kelvin attaches it to her hair, and Ethel asks to serve him for life, which Kelvin happily accepts. The party is joined by the rest of Kelvin's group and a little elf girl, who reveals herself as Leonhart Gone in disguise. Gone announces that Kelvin passed his S-rank exam, and an official promotion ceremony will be held in 4 days, featuring mock battles with other S-rank adventurers. Excited, Kelvin eagerly anticipates facing more strong opponents.